we have a recap shared on LinkedIn, and at that point, just record the request the recording. There's follow Modelware Systems and Howard Diesel. Now I'm making this easy for you because now I've put on some QR codes coming up, and we are always here available for you, LinkedIn, online, email. If you have any questions, anything you need to know, we are more than happy to spend time with you and set up a Teams meeting, whatever you need to know, we're here for you. Okay, so just this is to make it easy for following us all. There's Modelware Systems website, Howard Diesel LinkedIn, which you probably all follow as well. We have a Facebook page on Modelware Systems Facebook as well. So if anyone's on, whoopsie, sorry, I've got a cat problem. What happened this morning was one of the cats got out and I could not find him, so now the cats are in jail. Okay, so there's Modelware Systems websites, Modelware Systems Facebook, Modelware Systems LinkedIn, and then the Meetup group, the webinar group, which you're probably all on as well. Just take a QR and join up with all of those if you haven't already. In February, now we are more than halfway through February now, it's the 15th. And this is the Data Management for Professionals African Data Community webinar. So we're speaking to all the professionals today. Tomorrow, the CDMP Q&A is probably going to happen. It's 10 to 11. If Debbie can't do it, I'll probably do it. On Monday, Big Data and Data Science, we're very excited because Howard is going to be sharing with us about how many different terms of data science?
There's 160 something terms of data science and about 450 terms of statistics.
And we're going to do that in 55 minutes.
And we'll have Dan Steenkamp here to help explain some of the statistical models and some of the terms that I'm not always too sure of. I managed to pass statistics 1, but I didn't do too well.
And Dan has a PhD in statistics.
Yes.
Yes.
So I see Paul's hand is up. Is there a question, Paul?
No, just a comment. I'm jumped in and helping Debbie with the Q&A, but we've just changed it to 8 o'clock in the morning from 8 to 9.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
I got a catch. I got a yeah. But she's cool. She's changed us. It's already done on Meetup, so everything's ready.
Thank you so much. Okay.
Cool.
Yeah, I think we're off to the visa place tomorrow. All right, so 21st, DAMA South Africa user group. Who's speaking? I don't know.
Sure. I think it may be Rashay, and he's talking about using data-driven techniques to make decisions on anti-money laundering. So that's
going to be interesting.
It's what the Reserve Bank called the naughty boy list. So please don't get yourself onto the naughty boys, or make sure you don't do any business with the naughty boys. Otherwise, the Reserve Bank wants to ask all sorts of questions.
Okay, I'll tell everybody you know this is going to be a very important webinar. On Thursday is the last in this series for aimed at the executives. And do the Q&A again. Every Friday we do that Q&A, which is just for people who have questions that they can't find answers to on the web, and concerns that they have about the CDMP process, which is not simple, as all of you who have done those exams know. Okay, March, the 1st is a Friday. Every Friday is the Q&A. We have the first Monday of every month, we have a data modeling specialist group. I'm not sure who's speaking on that one, but join us. Last month, we were absolutely honored to have Steve Hoberman speaking to us. It was wonderful for all of those who made it. Oh, Debbie's got a spelling mistake then. Data management for mangers. All mangers, please join us on the first Thursday for what's next month's theme?
Going to be on data careers. building
your data career.
the steps taken to build your data career. Yeah,
that's important for everybody. So make a note of the Thursdays. I know Thursdays towards the end of the week, but this is such valuable free training. Please all join us for that. As usual, on the second Wednesdays, data privacy with Caroline Mouton. Big data and data science on the third Monday, and the third Wednesday, once again, our DAMA SA user group. We will tell you watch Meetup for the speakers. Okay, so the leak statistics from DAMA. I think this was August last year, so they haven't really updated
sorry,
it.
Veronica.
Yes?
Veronica, your screen isn't moving.
Did I not get to certified professionals?
No, you're still on February 2024.
What? I went to March. Do you think I need to drop? Let me
just unshare your screen and reshare.
Unshare and reshare. Okay, so you all missed March, which is good because there was a spelling mistake. Caro, where's the spelling mistake?
That's when I realized.
Still can't see it. It's black.
Yeah, I was looking for the spelling mistake. Couldn't figure it out. Okay, well, obviously I'm not paying enough attention.
No, February didn't have it. March has it. Am I still black? Do you think I need to drop off and rejoin?
I think so.
Okay, I'll be right back.
It's because Veronica's stuck on an apple, Howard.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Veronica. Thanks for that.
Don't forget to follow us on all those platforms and interact and like everything and invite your friends. Invite all your friends to follow us. Thank you.
Thanks, Veronica. All right, great. So this is the third session on transforming your data office. And I did plan to show you some of the detailed formulas this week on doing those calculations. So that's what this week's all about. Now, one of the questions we had last week was of the different frameworks. We spoke about all the different frameworks, and I'll show you here. And someone mentioned the PPDM, and I don't know if anyone, I think Majela was probably the only person that would know, but anyone know what PPDM stands for? There's a special prize, Paul Grobler. You'll get a bottle of wine if you get this right. And you're not allowed to look up on Google quickly. Okay. PPDM stands for Petroleum Professional Data Manager. Okay, and they have certificates, but it's just for the oil and gas. Okay, so they have standardized the data model. They've created lots of standards, and they did quite a good job, and they've got a level of certification as well. So I'm amazed at how well that has progressed and how much effort's going in there. But yeah, it's good to see what's there. But for those people someone said to me, there's a value, a data ROI or a valuation framework in PPDM. I've looked all over. I even tried Bing, Copilot, and BART, and whatever, ChatGPT, whatever I could get my hands on, and no one could show me anything with respect to PPDM and value driven. It's very much very similar to the DMBARC, where they've got all the different knowledge areas, quality, integration, sharing of data, same common data model, but that's about it. Okay, all right, so let's go forward. This is a comment that we had last week, and the interesting one about this one is this comment over here is make sure CDOs that you mandate your ROI before it is mandated of you. Okay, so you're really going to be in trouble when the business start asking you, like that executive asked me, what benefit are you giving me, Howard? And I couldn't answer, and I was very embarrassed. And what happened was that they closed the project down. Fortunately, they didn't close the whole program down, but it was rather embarrassing. Okay, so this is where a lot of it comes from. Can you see how badly the CDO is doing? The average tenure, which is the number of years, is 2.4, so they are very low with respect to the different areas. Okay. So what we are saying is one of the challenges of justifying data management and why, to an extent, data science and big data is the sweet spot at the moment is because the business people almost see the value that insight is giving them. They don't focus a lot on data quality and metadata and all those things that it's just like, where is the value? You know, how do we get value out of this? So it's all about making sure you're not valueless, it's not worth any money, it's not important, and directionless. A lot of the times we can get lost in doing policies and procedures, and then one asks, why are we doing all of this work? Okay. All right, so the last 2 weeks, we went through the fundamentals of data office ROI. And this week, we're going to go through some of these. And then next week, we want to finish off by helping you evaluate the framework that's right for you, and then looking at some of the case studies. And I was actually reading a very challenging case study today, and that was on how do you justify the ROI of learning and development or training? So one of the things we keep saying is, please understand that this data monetization or data value realization, it's not just about data products. It can also be about things like data literacy programs, data management certifications. What is the value that we get out of those elements? And it's quite a challenge to go through the process of valuing all these different initiatives. But the benefit that you get out of it is that if I create a valuation, a commercial valuation and a technical feasibility study, we are then trying to, in a way, compare apples with apples and not, for example, data science versus data quality. Okay, it's what is the benefit that I'm getting out of this data quality? And I'm going to show you some great examples today of those calculations. And those of you that have done your fundamentals, one of the big things that they say in data management is, how do we get consistent management of our data assets? And there were two things that were the answers to that question. Can anyone remember what those two things are? And I'm going to ask Mr. Bolton. I always pick on Paul. He's always good for a... Paul, do you remember which two they are?
Howard, you stumped me.
Okay, Veronica.
Spot.
Let's ask Veronica.
Please ask me again. Sorry.
Okay. So what are the in the first few slides, when we introduce data management, they look at how do we achieve consistency of managing our data assets? And they refer to two things that refer to getting consistent data management across your assets.
It's your data architecture, your business terms, your business glossary.
It was economic expression of your data valuation and classification. Those are the two important things to get consistent management of your data assets. And I like that. It makes so much sense to me when you operate at that level. And hopefully you're going to see it. So we did a little bit of this data valuation models last week, and now we're going to focus. Today, I'm going to focus on the data valuation frameworks, but specifically the work that I'm involved with in the EDM Council, and they have something called the Data Office ROI. Okay, and this is their playbook on achieving Data Office ROI. These are some of the templates that we use to calculate ROI, and very simply what we're saying is, if I'm investing 100,000 in the beginning, and I'm getting a 5% 5% return on investment. When am I going to get to 0? And that is my payback period. Okay, so my payback period will be in 2 years, and there you can see when it goes and it flips over from 0 positive, it goes over to that positive form, and then we start getting money back. What is important about this ROI is that constant evaluation and re-evaluation on the return on investment. So please don't think it's something like a business case or an ROI of a application project which you do up front to justify your business case, and then you never visit it again. That's one of the challenges we have to look at in terms of constantly reassessing, is this data product giving us the return we need? If not, close it down, stop using it, get it off your platforms. It's not giving you the value that was promised. Okay, so here's the playbook. Has anybody seen the EDM Council Data Office ROI playbook? Nobody? All right, so let me give you just a quick run through it. I'm going to focus on the calculation techniques today, which is this one, number 4 and number 5. But let me try to just introduce this quickly to you. I will go through it in detail next week. Organize for success. So the first thing is make the CDO accountable for data and data office ROI. And I like the separation between data assets ROI and data office ROI. The data asset is something that's generating money as a data product, and data office ROI is how effective is your data governance or your EIM program? What value are you giving back to the organization? Okay, so make the CDO accountable. Develop optimal CDO reporting relationships, so reporting to the CFOs, CIOs, those people that will be assessing that value. Establish product teams, understand central versus federated approach. And then there's this one, which is building financial literacy. So and I'm sure you're going to see today that you need to understand the finance side of it in terms of how to calculate the ROI. You can't just go into this thinking that there's just a few plus and minuses and divides and you're going to get the answer. Okay, now the other nice thing is what I like to include here, it's not just financial literacy, it's also business literacy. So how do we improve the value proposition? Where do we get the value proposition from? Where do we understand the value proposition? Can anyone tell me where we would find this information? Where would we find the value proposition, the business strategy? Who's responsible for that? Carolyn?
The CIO.
Okay,
Or
so
your
it's
CDO.
actually, yeah, the CIO typically looks after enterprise architecture, and it's going to be the business architect within the enterprise architecture that defines the business strategy, the value propositions. Paul Krubler does a lot of that. He calls it envisioning, and he connects what we want to get out of data to the business architecture. Am I correct, Paul?
Yes, this time I actually went to fetch my computer from the desk because I'm now on the couch and you call me to do things and then I'm far away. But yes, indeed, it's something I quite enjoy doing. And, and it's just getting you a little bit into the business mindset, which is great.
Right, and that's typically from your architectural background. So that's your responsibility. You should, when you build a data strategy, you should go and look for the business strategy, the business architecture, where do you go, the enterprise architecture department, which is typically reporting to the CIO and the business architect. Okay. Formulate change management, and then look at maturity framework. So how are you going to assess how well we're doing on ROI? Okay. And then we look at aligning with business problems. That's very much in line with our use case ideation and data strategy, where we look for opportunities to improve the business. We look to do that within in a 2-week period across the business, and then build an inventory of the data products. Okay, and for those products that have already been established, it is good to look at the financial value of those data products so that everything can be reassessed. One of the problems you have is, yes, new use cases are going to generate new data products, but what about the existing data products? You want to build that hierarchy. Okay, then we have direct approaches and indirect approaches. So to simplify, the direct approach is something that is going to generate revenue or going to reduce cost or risk. Okay, those are direct. We can see direct impacts. Indirect approach are those things that you can't put a financial value. As an example, data literacy. Okay, or learning and development. What is the benefit of getting your CDMP? Okay, so one of the benefits is an indirect way is, yes, when I have a better understanding of data management and I can explain properly, then typically I would have a impact on the effectiveness of my data projects. Okay, so we're doing things in a better way. It's we are more effective and efficient at what we are doing. So you can't put a number to that immediately, and you have to look at what value am I contributing to the business revenue. Okay, so allocate revenue. So you do that association, and then you say, okay, for this revenue that the business is earning, the team that built the data product or the indirect, they contributed 10%, 15% of the revenue. So they get 15% coming back to the data office. Okay, so those are some of the things that you have to work on, and you'll build what's called a portfolio ROI. Now, a portfolio ROI is made up of data product ROIs. That is a portfolio. So very much like a stock portfolio is made up of stock investments, you've got something called a data portfolio, which is the group of data products and how well are we doing. And we can also use data office KPIs. How well are we doing from a data management point of view? And we can look at putting an economic expression to that. Okay, and once you've done that, then you'll go into managing the initiatives, looking at some of the investments that your applications are costing you. And of course, data can help demonstrate that we are contributing more value. So be careful of if we can get the data out of these big enterprise applications into a data warehouse and start making good decisions, that process of collecting the data is very important to us. We don't just get the data, we have to work on the data. And then we go through the process of the value realization office, which is a little bit strange because one would think that this value realization office should be part of organizing for success. So I find that side a little bit upside down, but there's things like managing impact, doing data product ownership, and doing your data product reviews. Okay, so that's the playbook. Okay, we'll go into this more next week. So I'm going to focus on the calculations because I think everyone would like to see, how do I actually do this? How do I put an economic value to my data sets? I'm hoping that is a true statement for you. So please, we'll come back to it and go through the beginning and go through the whole framework. I'm just going to try to show you how do we do the costing? How do we do all what we refer to as financial literacy? Okay, so this is the financial literacy section. All right, are there any questions? I've gone quite a bit down the road. Not too many questions. Is everyone understanding the direction we're going in? Or any questions? Okay. All right. So when they looking at data products, remember I said we have to create an inventory of our data products, those data products that have already been set up, and then we got to create this economic expression. Now, what we've defined here is use a comparables technique for evaluating your data sets, and also, or using a business case. So we'll choose one or the others. Now, comparables is, well, LinkedIn sold their company for 2.4 billion. Remember that story of LinkedIn selling to Microsoft? And the analysts at that point in time said, Microsoft, how did you get to that number of the 2.4 billion? And at that stage, they couldn't really answer the question, but there were some numbers done. Now, could anyone think of what was the data set that we could use on that LinkedIn sale that we could use to compare to our data sets? What would the comparable data set be? Who's willing to give it a chance, give it an option? What do you? Charles Mathers. Charles, any ideas? What would you suggest a comparable data set? So it would be, okay, if LinkedIn was sold for that amount and they paid mainly for this type of data set, then what would my data set be? Any ideas, Charles? Okay, maybe not. Anyone? Anybody else? I mean, what is the big thing in LinkedIn? What's the main asset that LinkedIn have?
It's got relationships between people.
Great. And the most important one, if you look at counting, it's going to be the number of people on the platform, right?
Right.
So it's the number of customers. Okay, so if we take a simple financial thing, this is the way they did it. Microsoft LinkedIn transaction, it was actually 26.2 billion. Sorry about that. Number of LinkedIn member records at the time was 433 million. So the implied value per record was $60. Okay. Now, I'm not sure if you're aware, but any of those who are interested, Fitbit also sold theirs to Google. Who remembers that big transaction when Fitbit sold their wearables, when they sold the whole company, or Google acquired it? And it was the same thing. It was the number of active users that were wearing the watch. So it wasn't really the watch. Okay, the watch wasn't the asset. It was the number of users. I'm hoping that's making sense. Now, what the tricky point was, and I've seen this quite often. I remember doing a business case study with somebody, and they were saying, guys, I'm not interested as to whether we generate any revenue for the first 5 years. All I'm interested in is the number of active users. Okay, and Fitbit just kept on adding active users, even though it had lost its market share to Apple when the Apple Watch came out, and it was losing revenue. They just kept on banging away at increasing the number of active users, and that's what drove up their price, their market price on that transaction. Okay, that's what made them the money that they were able to get from Google on that sale. Paul, I see Mr. Bolton's is.
Sorry.
Any comments?
I was just wowing in the background here. Sorry, I must mute myself.
Okay, so yeah, it was a quite a learning experience for me, recognizing that shucks, it's not all about making profit. In some cases, when you're building products, a lot of the times the actual product is not the revenue. The product are the users and the people, and that's where the freemium model comes in, right? That's where the free model comes in with LinkedIn. When you do pay when you go to the premium version, you pay, but they all about getting people onto the platform. Okay. All right, so that was comparables. Now we come into this section, which is, yeah, that's a good comment, Henry. If any time the product is free, then you are the product. Okay. Right, business cases. So these are the typical business cases, and please remember when you do the use case ideation, it's really good, first of all, that you explain to people the taxonomy. This is how we classify our use cases. We're either going to grow revenue, we're going to reduce costs, we're going to improve cash flows, or we're going to mitigate risks. Now, we should all know about this: regulation, papaya, data privacy, NDMO, cybersecurity, data risk, ESG. Okay, that's become big. EDM Council, there you can see the ESG framework that EDM Council has in sustainability, environmental sustainability and governance. Okay, so the two things in this area is NPV, which is the net present value of the business case using discounted cash flows and multiples based on revenue or operating cash flows. So I'm going to show you some examples, so don't worry too much about that now. And typically based on specific metrics, the impact of data on the metrics with the associated financial value of that element. Yes, Mr. Grobler.
I just want to check with you. The business case options there, that's quite typical, right? But it has a very big financial focus.
Yes, it is.
But we've spoken now about, for example, the importance of just user acquisition. Will that be on that level, or would that?
Yeah,
is that a valid business case subcategory, or is that a separate?
Yeah,
thing?
Paul. So what you will be doing there is that your value, okay, the value of your user is you get an economic value of the user. Now, what that is saying is that you may not be recognizing that revenue now, but your end goal is that when you sell the company, the value of the company will be associated with the number of users, and that's the revenue that you will get.
Okay, so that actually still comes back to a financial metric.
Yes, it has to. So
Yeah.
whenever you're dealing with a direct approach, remember, direct versus indirect. When you're dealing with a direct approach, it's got to be a valuation, a financial value.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Okay, even with the costs, how am I going to reduce the costs? If I talk about automation, okay, if I go and automate, for example, data governance, if I buy a data governance tool, and instead of the business people doing all the data quality assessments or building the business glossary or whatever it is manually in Excel, what is the value of that automation? So you would look at reduced costs. And we're going to go through some examples of that now. Okay, good question. All right, so that was comparables, and let's look at the different business cases. Now, I don't know if you guys remember when we had Mr. Doug Laney on in Infonomics. One of his first slides that he spoke about was investors are impressed by data-centric companies. Okay, I'm hoping all of you can see that. Can everyone see the different numbers here? So this is, they call it the Tobin's Q ratio. This is the average company. This is data savvy companies, and this is 2 times market to book value. And then data product companies is 3 times market to book value. Okay, so that's a ratio that's on the market at the moment from an investor's point of view. And this almost relates to this enterprise value to revenue multiple. Okay, a stock valuation technique that compares a company's enterprise value to its revenue. Okay, so Paul, this is similar to what we were talking about, is the stock value that people would buy stocks in the company compared to the revenue that it's generating. Now, certainly in the case of Fitbit, when it was losing money, it was still seen as a, sort of a very attractive stock. And there's a difference between the revenue and the value or the perceived value of the company on the stock market. Does that also help you, Paul? Okay, great. So
Yes,
now this enterprise value, okay, what they call with NPV is the revenue in the first year multiplied by this multiples. And remember, we spoke about the enterprise value to revenue multiples. I'm just going to go back there to that thing. Can you see discounted cash flows or multiples? In this situation, we're using the multiples. Okay, multiples based on revenue or operating cash flows. All right. So these are the types of use cases. The NVP approach, one is the multiples that I've just been sharing, and here is a simple example of the multiples. Okay, this business case may be computed as 4 million in a simplified manner as follows: is revenue in year 1 multiplied by that. So if the business case generates 2 million in revenue, then and it has a multiplier of 2, remember Doug Laney's, then the business case is 4 million. Okay. Now there is a formula in the enterprise value, and that also talks about the situation with Fitbit, which is equity value plus long-term debt minus the cash, and that's the way in which you can calculate that metric or that value. Okay, discounted cash flows, which is the sum of future cash flows in today's term based on the time value of money. All right, so let's go through some examples of the grow revenue. This will help a lot of us and a lot of the work that we do. So here's an example of a big bank, and the number of customers in the retail bank was 10 million. Okay. The estimated percentage of customer records with inaccurate dates of birth was 5%. Now, why is this so important? And it's so important because of this. Okay. The average dropout rate associated with customers who must visit the branch due to incorrect dates of birth before the bank can sell them an additional product. Okay, so that's what's causing us the challenge, and that's why this number of data quality is so important. Okay, so basically, if we have 5% error rate on our date of birth, okay, the estimated number is 500,000 records that are wrong. So the annual percentage of customers, okay, those are the people who looking to buy another product is 10%. Then we have a 50% dropout if our customer date is wrong. It's too much issue, and therefore we go through this process and we have estimated number of annual cross-sell opportunities that are lost due to incorrect dates of birth. So we're losing 25,000 opportunities a year. And we're basically saying the average value of a cross-sell is 20,000. And therefore, when we do those further calculations, we get the cost of this or the potential increase. And I like this as well as let's not stop talking about cost sometimes. Let's look at what could we benefit is 25 million. Okay, that's what we could do just by fixing these records. So what is the value of a data quality initiative? And it has to fix 500,000 records. So let's say it only fixes 200,000 in the first iteration. It's going to be 50 times that 200,000. Okay. Now this relates to Tom Redman's book. I don't know if this is what I looked at as well, is that the cost or the lost revenue of dirty data for a dirty record is 50 USD. And if he looks at that rule of thumb, 1 in 10, that basically, the numbers are wrong. It should be 100,000 plus 500,000 times 10. That should be 50,000. That's right. That's right. 5 million. So it's 15 million that we're losing. That's the way Tom Redman calculates it. Who remembers those calculations that Tom Redman does just as a, they call it the Friday afternoon data quality check. Okay, where you look at the records, you look at the important metrics, and depending on the number of incorrect records, you do certain calculations. Okay, so this is really helpful in justifying your data quality initiative to fix it. Does that make sense in terms of you have a use case? This is a description of the use case against certain numbers, and you can then justify the amount of, and again, you're getting a value here. So remember your data quality plan, do, check, act is you're not going to go for the first time, you're not going to go for, I'm going to fix all 500,000. It may not be possible, especially if I have to go and contact all the customers. So you're going to have campaigns to take one at a time, or not one, but a batch at a time, and look to improve that amount. Any questions or comments on that one? Cool.
I think everyone's stunned, Howard.
Yeah, it's
this simple actually. It's just to do this. This takes a bit of effort to do this, to back up your business case.
Yes.
That's all.
Now, Paul, this is something when you build the awareness sessions, or before you do your use case ideation, what you're wanting to do is explain to people the different approaches and the type of data that we need to collect. Okay. Carolyn's asking the average conversion percentage of cross-sell. Yes, so that's the dropout rate. So E is the dropout rate of 50%.
Oh no, what I was wondering is if it's a cross-sell opportunity, how often are those opportunities actually realized? What's the percentage of realization of those? How often, or what percentage do you...
So if the dropout rate is 50%, then we have a 50% positive.
Okay.
So if I'm losing 50%, then I'm gaining the 50%.
So you will definitely convert the other 50% into a sale.
Yeah, that's
I mean, that's just in this example. I mean, your own business will have its own. You have to figure these things out for your own business. These are just indicative numbers.
But what's important is that when the business people are looking at how do they grow revenue, they need these numbers, and what numbers are going to make sense to them to be able to look at the impact on that.
But these numbers are also readily available if you have call centers and things like that. We've done some work at the Vodacom call centers, but on the data side. But I mean, the way that they can measure amazing detail of what happens, not only with the agents and their actions, but what happens on the customer side too.
Yeah. Now, Paul, what's so critical about what you've just said is when you do these awareness sessions, or when you're trying to set up this data revenue, that change management one that we had in the EDM Council, you want to give them examples of how other people are doing it, and how other companies in different industries, and then how people in your industry are doing it. And last week we had one on AT&T, Deutsche Telekom, and Vodafone. We had examples of what they were doing. So these are the type of things that you need to prep your people for, that they come in prepared and they're ready to do those calculations.
Yeah.
But of course, as a person who's doing the ideation session, you're the one who's walking them through it and giving them examples, and then making sure that they've got the appropriate justifications and numbers and metrics. Okay. Great. So I liked your comment there, Paul. It is that simple, right? Given that you've got the numbers. Now, a lot of the times when you started for the first time and you haven't been doing your business measurement, and this is where business KPIs are so important, your business metrics. Not your data office metrics, not your number of glossary terms and stuff like that. It's your business metrics. It's what's the value of one bum on the seat, and what's the loss of not being able to fill a class, or whatever it is. Those are the metrics that people must be aware of, and then you go after and you look at those metrics. Okay. And you ask questions around those metrics that they're using to measure the business. I think I showed you last week were all of the core metrics of a telco industry. It was everything from connection rates to network quality to optimization. Those are the ones that you're wanting to, that that they'll have the numbers around. Mr. Bolton, does that also make sense?
Yeah, it's just like there was I mean, the homework is done a lot of the time in those taxonomies, right? Those value trees.
Yes,
and so that piece of work as well is critical to build those value trees. If there isn't one already available as an industry standard or something like that.
Correct. Okay. So I mean, so many times you've got McKinsey, Bain, all those people that have done this sort of work, APQC, they also done a lot of work in this area with the business metrics and critical success factors. Those are the ones that you want to talk about in your ideation sessions and look for the use cases where you're going to generate value. Now, I'm hoping you can you can see immediately from this type of discussion with the CEO is going to be a lot more exciting than how many policies can I generate. Okay. The challenge comes in as well. What is explaining to him what's the benefit of a policy and a procedure using that indirect approach? Okay. This is direct. These are the exciting ones, and people get excited by it, but it's not that easy. Now, what you will find, remember I said grow revenues, but you also have reduced costs. And these are most often, this is the key driver in your use cases. Paul, I don't know if you remember, Mr. Bolton, if you remember what our second use case in one of the customers was, please help me save. I have 5 people spending 5 days in the beginning of every month and they sharing data manually. Okay, that's a reduced cost. And it's relatively simple, right? From a point of view of saying, well, how much are those people costing you? What's the lost opportunity that you're facing? And the amount of time, and then if we can reduce it, we're not going to get rid of it. We're going to reduce it. So please don't keep on saying, we'll get, you won't have any of these costs afterwards. You're just going to have a reduction in cost. Very similar to risk mitigation. You will never get to a zero risk, for example, data privacy, all right? You will never get to a point where you won't, it's possible that you'll never get data privacy breach. So what are the examples? Workflow efficiency?
I remember, sorry to interrupt. Remember the example at, I won't name and shame, but one of the banks we worked at once before, the group finance floor full of CAs,
yes.
just doing balancing at the end of the month.
Yeah. And that
balancing of data.
Yeah, Paul, and if you remember, it was actually T plus. They used a metric called T plus. And basically the metric was after the month end closed, how many days did it take them to prepare the reports that they had to send to the South African Reserve Bank? Yeah. And it was fascinating. It was actually ABSA, the ABSA one that we also had some engagement with. They were doing so well. I think they were at T+3, and they were able to submit their reports to the Reserve Bank. And they were way ahead of lots of the other banks, and they were getting lots of benefit out of that. So that was the other side where we saw the value of that. But where they did see was a case of they had something like, as you were saying, in some cases they had something like 50, what was it, chartered accountants that were doing all of this reconciliation at the end, and they had to resolve it.
That's right, yeah.
But, okay, so there we got call center, call time reduction. One always has to be careful of call time reduction is, yes, the operator may be so bad and so offensive that the people put the phone down, and then I've got a lot of reduction in my cost, but what is the feeling and the assessment or the satisfaction ratio on that? So be careful of just looking at things like this, and there could be a negative side effect. So you have to watch other metrics as well. But it's call time reduction, it's fee reconciliation, user acceptance testing reduction, and those are the type of things that we can use in terms of training on test cases and things like that. And there's another one which is called application sunset. Okay, what is who remembers those diagrams that they have that enterprise architecture does in terms of sunsetting certain technology? There was Sunrise, for example. In Sunrise, that would be AI, generative AI. Then we've got in sunshine, that means it's doing very well, and any new cases can be added. Those technologies that are in sunset, you should not be doing any new project on a sunset technology or application. Okay. And here are some of the case studies that they had in terms of the benefit that they got out of sunsetting certain applications. And some of you may be aware of, for example, some of the banks where they've got some of the mainframe scenarios sitting there, and a lot of them have been unable to sunset those environments, and then they battle to standardize. So what's happening there is that they're creating more and more platforms where you've got to get data and collect data. Okay. So then there's the idea of the 360-degree view of the customer, avoiding duplicate customers, bad data, and then redundant onboarding. So every single application that you have that's separated, that's not being fed by master data, you need to go and onboard on each one of these platforms. Okay. And so there's a cost in that situation. Okay. Improved cash flow business case. Okay. So this is not about impacting revenue or operating cash flows. This is about relevant to non-operating interest expense and net working capital. Okay. And one of the case studies was a vendor master data management system, and they had multiple contracts with the same vendor with different payment terms. Okay, and what they did on that one was to say, well, if I consolidate, they had the same vendor registered twice, and one had 30 days contract. They had two contracts with that vendor, one for 30 days and one for 60 days. And what they were able to do was to say, well, let's standardize on the 30-day ones, and then that related to a cash flow improvement, because they weren't waiting those extra 30 days for the cash flow to come in from the vendor. And now I saw perfect examples of this on one example where we worked with a procure to pay in an Oracle platform where they had loaded vendors incorrectly. Now, the interesting thing about that was that in the end of the day, they thought that the Oracle master data was too expensive, and what we did was we actually standardized it, where we said only 2 or 3 people could create a vendor. They had basically manual procedures that they had to run through before they created the vendor. They didn't get into any fancy technology, and they were able to reduce the number of data quality issues on their vendors dramatically, and that was a solution to their problem. Not all solutions come from technology. Paul, I'm sure you remember the one we had was they wanted to have all sorts of tech to fix the number of branch codes. And instead of doing that, we basically just looked at the people's behavior. Some business units were getting very scared of running out of branch codes. So they went and booked out something like 15,000 branch codes. Okay. And caused a massive reduction on the number of available branch codes. Okay, so let's have a look at that. This is an example of that. Number of vendor records was 15,000. Estimated number of vendor duplicates from the master data, they said there was 3,000. And then we had these inconsistent payment terms, net 30, net 60, and they had a 20% with those inconsistencies. And so we had 600, which is the 20% times the 3,000, gave us 600. Now, the increase in the float by bringing it down from 30 to 60 was 100%. Okay, and the average vendor float per contract was 100,000, and that was the amount of more favorable payment terms, the cost of capital, and then the annual savings in the cost of capital by increasing the payables float. Okay, 1.8 million. That's the value that they got out of doing that. Now, I'm sure you can see, and I know Paul Grobler's had lots of experiences here. If you can justify the value that you get out of fixing these problems, not even talking about master data solutions and that, this is what you want to get, and this buy-in is big. Now, It's about finding the problems. It's about understanding the typical business problems that you have in this scenario. Okay, I can see I'm dropping off quite late. I'm getting quite late. Any questions? I'm hoping you've got the examples, you've got the understanding now. Can you see how you're going to work through it? Here's a mitigating risk. Lots of times there's this reduction on risk. And here's an example. I will be giving you all these slides at the end. There is 345 slides, so there's lots of things, but you'll be able to come and work through these examples. And we are setting up an afternoon session and a lab, and we'll basically take you through the Excels on this. But any questions? I don't want to take you too long on this one. Questions, comments? And then we've got one on clinical trials where you can use data science to approximate the possibility of not getting this high degree of variability in the drugs. And then this would basically say, what's the value of us looking at it? And there was a whole lot of different trial mins and maxes and things like that. Okay, the one thing that I really like, and that's for data governance, master data, data quality, is this adjustments to the valuation. So you come up with this valuation, I call it a haircut. And basically what they're saying is, if I don't look after my data, this is going to be the impact on that cost of revenue. Okay, it may be metadata, not understanding something. It may be data quality, which you've shown an example. It may be data models or master data. All of these things like duplicate customers. And that's where you want to have a data management maturity assessment at hand to be able to show you the people, this is the cost of having low data management scores. Paul, I know you're busy with one data management evaluation maturity assessment. I'm hoping what you'll do is when you share this with your customers on what's the risk and the impact, these are the type of things that you need to explain to them.
No, thank you, Howard. This is awesome. The one example where we struggled to get a proper explanation of why not practice metadata management.
Yeah,
it wasn't a focus. It wasn't deemed as important.
Yes.
And so, which obviously translates into, well, my view is quality issues and potentially quality issues and all that. So these things are. This is fantastic to bring to that presentation when I'm explaining to them the importance of, not, as you say, yes, the deliverables are real, the activities are real, but this is the nuts and bolts, the value of what you're doing when you do all that work.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, what's good? What was good for me is just to sort of realize again. I mean, all of these things depend so much on how well you can actually not understand the data, obviously that too, but understand the business and the expression of the business issues, and really getting into the minds of the business to understand what might go wrong and so on. If you've got those things clear, then the data is almost easy if it's there, at least.
Yes.
But it always comes back to, through the data, through architecture. At the end of the day, it still comes back to just getting into the mind of the business, which I guess for me, which keeps on making our job interesting, right?
Yes, but Paul, one of the things I'd like to suggest is that sometimes when we do the envisioning, we don't bring the economic envisioning in there, the financial visioning, right?
True.
So we're talking about the amazing things you can do with data, but some of them are probably sitting there and saying, oh, okay, how does that benefit me? How does it, at the end of the year, when I have to report on my performance on the business unit, how do I explain that? And I think that's that next level, that what we are suggesting is do a use case ideation with these financial things before the strategy, so that you have an understanding of what the potentials are and what you could look at initiating your strategy and moving forward, and then prioritizing the work that needs to be done. Does that make sense? That's a little bit of change that I have brought in, is to have these individualized sessions with the different departments, looking at what value, what economic value or commercial value we can bring in.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to the strategy, that's when you start, you have to have done some of this work, so you can now say, well, okay, what is it that, where do we need to focus? What are our current demands, where we need to get to, what's causing us the pain at the moment, and what's important to us.
Yeah, that's quite a good point. The envisioning structure has a place for that, the second sort of block called metrics, but sometimes we kind of use that more for milestoning, and you're quite right. We need to turn that into desired outcome and measure that in terms of something is like this, and after we've completed that, it will be like that, and we can quantify that.
That's the thing, Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody. I know a few people are dropping off. I'm happy to sit and chat if you'd like, but for any of those, any other questions before we switch off the recording? Great.